Good morning, everybody. It is Saturday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, digital sports producer for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, back with another Steelers mock draft tracker video with our draft expert, Christopher Carter. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing great, Adam. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. It's the weekend, it's April. It's starting to get a little bit warmer, so that means we're getting closer to the draft. So just a reminder to everyone, if you're joining us for the first time, this is our weekly video where we track all of the mock drafts on the internet, see what experts are saying, from every corner about what the Steelers might do with the number 17 pick. This week, we've got it goes even deeper. I think we have a 4-round and a 7-round mock. So there's lots of picks to chew over, Chris. I'm excited to get into it with you.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot. That's the thing is like now we're starting to see more and more mocks roll in that account for free agency, and the Steelers signed 2 more guys on Thursday, and they brought in Bud Dupree. Who knows, by the time that this is airing, they might have signed Bud Dupree, but they've made more veteran moves to kind of fill holes. So now there's not as much dire at some situations, like them signing Keanu Neal. They could still sign a safety, or they could still draft a safety if they want, but now it's not like imminent. If they don't draft a safety, they're going to be in a tough spot. So lots to talk about here about the new possibilities.
First one I want to get into is Jason McIntyre of Fox Sports mock this week. He had a very interesting pick. Dalton Kincaid, the tight end from Utah. If you've watched any college football, you know about him.
Oh, yeah.
He was great, a great pass catcher, a great weapon for the Utes as they made their run to the Pac-12 championship and then the Rose Bowl. Chris, how on a scale of 1 to 10, given what we've talked about through this whole draft process, how big of a curveball would Dalton Kincaid be for the Steelers at number 17?
An extreme curveball. The whole thing, though, is I think that they don't necessarily need a receiving tight end. They need a tight end who can make receiving plays, but is a much better blocker. Pat Freiermuth is a good receiver. He is not a good blocker yet. He is adequate at best when he's on his better days. Zach Gentry has kind of taken over the blocking role, which is why they re-signed him, and also why I'm not so sure that they draft a tight end at 17. I thought there was a chance that they could draft a tight end at 32 before they signed Gentry, and I thought Darnell Washington out of Georgia was the perfect specimen for that, because you look at the way that he plays, he's physical, he's aggressive, he can make insane catches, he's still refining his catching ability, but yeah, I think that this would be I think that 17 is a bit of a reach for a Dalton Kincaid at this point. But who knows? Maybe someone really thinks that this 11 personnel look is really going to work with 2 receiving tight ends, and that's what the Steelers could go with there. I just think that that's not necessarily the plan now. I do think a tight end gets taken in this draft class because this is a really good tight end class, maybe the best tight end class we've seen in a long time. And it would behoove the Steelers to add to the room somehow, and then you could kind of bump Connor Hayward to more of the H-back role, which is what he's more physically suited for when you look at his height, weight, and just his build. So I think it would behoove the Steelers to go get a tight end, but maybe wait till the 3rd or the 4th round for like a Schoonmaker from Michigan.
We talk a lot about those, top 3 offensive tackles, those top 3 corners as kind of the no-brainers that if any of them are on the board, the Steelers just go straight to the mic and grab them. It's after those guys are off the board that maybe things get a little more complicated. In that scenario where, Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr., those guys that we've talked about so much are off the board, do you think about Kincaid a little bit more, or does that not really change, the logic you just outlined for us here?
I think Omar Khan needs to be hitting the phones. I think that if that happens, someone's going to be aggressive for a Dalton Kincaid. Someone's going to want to move up for one of those guys, and the Steelers need to explore the options of picking up more day 2 and day 3 picks, because that is the sweet spot of this NFL draft class. If they can get one of those top guys, great. But there are a lot of guys. Like, here's the thing, Adam. They get to round 2 and 3. They have 3 picks right now. I think it would behoove them to come away with 4, maybe even 5 guys from that part of the draft. They could do a lot to fix this roster for the long term, not just for this year, but get guys who project well for a long time. Like, for example, if they want to reinforce the defensive line, I love Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin. He's not a first rounder, but I could see him easily going in the second round. I love Julius Brents out of Kansas State. Not a first rounder, but I can easily see him going in the second round. Gervon Dexter, the defensive lineman out of Florida. And you could even get your tight end in the second round if you really wanted to. Also, I think that's a great place to get a receiver in this draft is the second or third round. But if they trade down, like say they trade back to like 24, 25, drop down a few spots there, they can pick up probably a second round pick or a third round pick and some change added on to that. And you also have to remember they don't have many day 3 picks. They have, once day 3 hits, the 4th round comes, they have the 120th pick, and then they have to wait all the way to the 7th round with no 5th and 6th round picks. I can see Omar Khan being willing to wheel and deal to make things happen. But I also think, Adam, and I've been talking about this week, and because he mentioned it, I think the Steelers aren't going to be afraid to trade up if they think that that's the move because they have the ammunition with the 32nd overall pick. You could trade the 17th pick and the 49th pick and move up. If you look at the draft tech chart that puts point values onto each pick, the 49th and the 17th add up to at least get you the 10th overall pick from the Eagles. Not sure if the Eagles would be willing to move, but maybe, who knows, maybe Andy Weidel can work some magic with his former team. But even if you move up into the top 12, you could easily get one of those top corners or one of those top tackles. And then here's the thing, with the 32nd overall pick, you can then hold that, wait till the end of the first day of the draft, and what happens every year is immediately GMs start getting on the phone for that next pick on the first day of the first pick of the second day of the draft, and they want it desperately because they're like, oh, that guy, we thought we had him going in the first round. We got to get him now. We got to do him now. And now the Steelers, they could trade back in the second round with that 32nd round pick and recoup the pick that they lost by trading up. So I think there's a lot of possibilities here. The bottom line, though, Adam, I just think that this is a year for Omar Khan. He's putting his footprint in the Steelers organization as the head of the GM. This front office, they have a chance to be really aggressive. I think it'd be a great year to do that in either direction.
Yeah, Chris, we got into that a lot last week in the previous mock draft tracker video. So if you haven't checked that out, go there and you can find out more of what Chris thinks the possibilities could be. But it's at least fun, right, to imagine Kenny Pickett having another real weapon in Dalton Kincaid at the very least.
Sure, yeah, it'd be fun. I think that there's other needs that they have that would be great to address other than a second receiving tight end. I think you could still get a really good tight end in the second or third round. Just 17th overall seems a bit pricey for me. And it's, again, offensive. This team wants to get stronger in the red. Mike Tomlin said this at owners meetings. They were talking about this. They want to be able to run the ball. That's right now. A lot of teams, if you look at the trends, the numbers, the analytics, it's pointing to more teams running the football now. Slowly but surely, every year it's been taking up. The New York Times even did a piece on that was analyzing just the overall numbers and how the percentages have been going up slightly every year. It's because more and more defenses are filling their roster with guys that are smaller, quicker, more adjusted to passing offenses. And when you're getting smaller, quicker guys, you're not getting guys that can get up, get physical with offensive linemen, and make plays on stronger running teams. And that's why the Steelers want to be that while they're developing Kenny Pickett into the future franchise quarterback that they want. So, sure, getting him a second tight end might be solid. I think they could make something out of that. They could run 12 personnel packages out of that. But Dalton Kincaid, to me, is more of the pure receiving tight end. I think that, again, if they were to get a guy, it'd be Darnell Washington in the second round. I just don't know if they make that move now because they brought back Zed Gentry, and he's kind of is your blocking tight end there. But this is also the thing is that Omar Khan has followed, he's done it his own way, but they're still following the Kevin Colbert philosophy of fill out the roster with veterans so that you don't feel pressed to get one specific position on draft day, and you can operate from a foundation of strength instead of feeling desperate and having to get one specific position when you're forced at any spot.
Chris, another very interesting mock draft this week was Jordan Reed's 7-round mock over at ESPN. He does it, I think, once a year, and that's it. I always like to go a little bit deeper and see. Our Ray Fittipaldo does a 7-round mock draft, but there's not a whole lot of other guys that try to run through the whole draft and sim the whole thing. But his top 3 for the Steelers, with those first and second round picks, were Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle from Tennessee, we've talked about a lot. Brian Branch, the safety from Alabama, who we've also talked about a lot. He can move around a lot. He's versatile. And then Trenton Simpson, the linebacker from Clemson. What do you think of that top three in light of, you mentioned that they signed Keanu Neal to be a safety. Is Brian Branch maybe a guy that a lot of people were excited about before, but maybe you're not so much now, given that they've kind of filled that need for the next couple of years?
So it's important to also remember that Brian Branch is not your traditional strong safety. He's more of a slot help guy who can float between safety positions. And one thing that Mike Tomlin also talked about this week at the owners' meetings was, safety positions are starting to become very interchangeable. Like, you have guys who play in the box, you have guys who play deep and free safety, but most safeties, you need guys who can play both, because you have to do so much in disguising your coverages that if you just have a pure strong and a pure free, like, people imagine like Ryan Clark and Troy Polamalu back in like the late 2000s, and they think about how guys line up in Madden and things like that. Those days are very different now when you look at the schematics of NFL defenses. And sure, there's guys that specialize in certain things over others, but you want guys who are flexible. And so Brian Branch, I think, is a guy that could be flexible. He could help you out in slot coverage. The one thing is his testing numbers were not very good at the combine. He looked really good on the field, so that's what's probably going to carry him. I do think that Keanu Neal at least makes it not as desperate, but again, I thought this is what they were going to try to do, is get a guy like a Terrell Edmunds in there. But I will say this too, Keanu Neal, you look at his numbers, Adam, you've been in Pittsburgh this whole time. Anytime Terrell Edmunds missed a tackle, it was like, oh, look at Terrell Edmunds, he can't tackle. And this year he missed the highest percentage of tackles that he had his entire career at 12%. The last 2 years, Keanu Neal has missed over 16% of his tackles each year. And I think that Steelers fans, there's a chance that Keanu Neal perfectly works out and he fits the scheme well and it's just a really good ad. But you look, he's shorter than Edmunds, he's slower than Edmunds, he's older than Edmunds, and he misses more tackles. And they allow similar NFL passer ratings in recent years when quarterbacks target them. I'm not so sure that Steelers fans are going to be satiated by Keanu Neal when the season starts. Now, I think Keanu Neal, again, a good veteran that can float around. He'll communicate well. I think that he's a smart safety, so like you'll be able to rotate him, KZ, and Fitzpatrick. And with that secondary, maybe he does really well because he's in a group that can kind of play well together, and he could be part of a really good system. But I think that he's not the slam dunk there, and I think that it would still leave the door open to get a safety this year, but maybe not early with Brian Branch, because he would take either the 17th or the 32nd overall pick at the earliest. But I do think it keeps the door open for guys like Jordan Battle and Jair Brown, who you could probably get maybe in the 3rd and 4th round.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Chris, one of the Trenton Simpson, who I mentioned as the number 49 pick, he's a new name that we have not talked about that they could possibly add to that middle linebacking core. He's fast. He can cover a lot of the field. What do you think of him as a possibility, especially considering what they've already done at that position, with the Landon Roberts and Cole Holcomb?
I actually really like the idea of a Trenton Simpson. I think that he's the kind of athlete that you really want to pair, not pair, a couple, because it's 3 linebackers you're talking about there, but fit into that group, because both Landon Roberts and Cole Holcomb are run first, play downhill, physical, fill the hole type of linebackers. Trenton Simpson is the missile you want flying around in coverage. He's so fast, he can go sideline to sideline, and he looks more comfortable in coverage. I'll also say, though, Jack Campbell, though doesn't fly around like Trenton Simpson, he looks very comfortable in coverage. I think either of those guys in the second rounds would be wins for the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they could be your Mike linebacker, they can be your guy that helps more in coverage, and be the linebacker who develops over the next year or so. So I love the idea of a Trenton Simpson. He's been someone I've had my eye on since the start of the draft process, just the way that he plays. The Steelers need another athletic linebacker who can, run with running backs, run with receivers when necessary. You don't want to do it all the time, but you need athletic linebackers in today's NFL. It's part of it. Teams are going to match up a slot receiver with your linebacker several times throughout games. You need guys who can at least be comfortable in keeping those pass windows closed down. And I think Simpson is one of the guys that fits that bill.
Yeah, I think he could definitely be in the mix. That's why I love these multi-round mocks, because he's a guy we don't get to talk about early on. But when you get deeper into the mocks, you get more chances to talk about more guys, and I think he could be one of those people that should be on the radar that maybe isn't, because he's just a later round pick. Chris, the third round pick in this Jordan Reed mock was Darius Rush, the cornerback, I believe, from Texas A&M. Let me look. I forget what school he's from, but his name's Darius Rush. He's a cornerback. What do you think of his game as an option, as maybe a later round cornerback to address the depth, or maybe he could find his way onto the field, the way Cam Sutton was able to after he was drafted in the third round?
He's an SEC cornerback from South Carolina. I like his build, 6'2". He runs really well. He runs a 4.36. He could be a guy that works out in the long run. I don't think he's a starter right now, but this is also what you position yourself to be with Patrick Peterson and Akella Witherspoon and Levi Wallace as your veteran corners at the start, at the top of everything. You can draft a guy in the third round and feel comfortable about letting them develop. And that's where I think that that the Steelers are if they drafted a Darius Rush. I like his athleticism. I like his length. I think that he could end up working out for the Steelers. When I look at cornerbacks, I think that this is a really good cornerback class. I think that they could get a really good cornerback in any of the three picks before the third round here, whether it be if they trade up and get one of the top guys in Gonzalez or Witherspoon, if they find a way to land Porter, if they find a way to land a Julius Brents, any of those guys there that I think that can contribute in those types of ways. I think that there's definitely a space to that. But Darius Rush, again, a good athlete, and this is the whole thing about this cornerback class. You look at it from top to bottom, and there's athletes all over the place. Tyreek Stevenson is interesting. Cam Smith is interesting. Kelly Ringo is interesting. There's a lot of guys who have length, speed, and showed good ball skills. That's the other thing here, is that the Steelers at the end of the day, they want guys who attack the ball. Clark Phillips is another one that you could throw in there. But yeah, there's a lot of guys that I really like as far as how they can fit there in different spots. Darius Rush, though, I think he'd be a guy that would need to learn for a year or two, but certainly a guy I think that is talented and would be definitely someone that you could kind of look to in future years to step up for the Steelers secondary.
Could you see the Steelers picking two cornerbacks and getting one of those top guys, and also saying, hey, let's get more of a project in the third round, and maybe in a year or two, those are your guys. If a Darius Rush could develop into being a reliable number two, is that a scenario you can imagine, or is that a little too much emphasis on that position?
I actually think it would behoove them, especially with the picks that they have right now, especially also because Terrell Austin seems to be going for guys who can take the ball away. That to me is so big a part of that. If you can get an outside corner and a slot corner who both specialize in those types of things, I think you put yourself in a very strong position to build your secondary for the future. Because again, like we were saying earlier, this secondary right now, it's built on experience, but they need guys for the future who develop. And when you have this many veterans, especially a Patrick Peterson around, I think it puts you in a position where you can say, hey, you know what, we can develop guys right now. We have a leader in the room that's going to help everyone, kind of fill out their positions and not make you feel, as limited because you have a younger guy there. And Darius Rush is a guy who does have ball skills. Like I'm not gonna lie. He's not the best at mirroring. I think that he could get better at his footwork and the way he flips his hips to go. But when his pure speed and his ball skills, he's a guy that can be developmental. But there's guys like Travis Hodges Tomlinson out of TCU. I think he's a guy with a lot of ball production. Emmanuel Forbes, another one. Those are guys that you got them. They'd be more slot with their size. And I know Forbes is a little bit taller, but he's also really light at 166 pounds. It's extremely small. But guys like that who you could play in the slot and also be ball hawks, they could start with these guys, and then you could get a Darius Rush type of cornerback later, and then have them filling in on the outside. And I do think you want to capitalize. This, like I said, this is a really good tight end class. This is a great cornerback class. There's a lot. There's guys in the first round. You could get guys in the third and even fourth round that I think would be solid prospects.
Chris, another multi-round mock this week was Chad Reuter from NFL.com. His top three for the Steelers were Nolan Smith, the edge rusher from Georgia, then Anton Harrison, the tackle from Oklahoma, and Antonio Johnson, the linebacker from Texas A&M. What do you think of that trio at the top as guys that the Steelers could end up with?
Nolan Smith, I think, is a great prospect as far as his athleticism, his explosive burst, the way he tests, and then you look at his tape from Georgia. He would just maul. He would just run right through people. He wouldn't overpower you with his strength. He'd overpower you with explosiveness. Like, he would just explode into you, move you, and get around. I think Nolan Smith is going to be a heck of an edge rusher in the NFL. He talks about he wants to model his game after Von Miller. Talked to him at the combine about that, and Von Miller was flattered by that, and I think that's one of the cooler things. But here's the issue is that I'm not so sure. Like, he has to be taken at 17. I don't think he gets to 32, and I think that the Steelers don't need another edge rusher with their first pick of the NFL draft, especially because they're bringing in Bud Dupree for a visit. If they sign him, he's definitely the third edge rusher. So now you're talking about Nolan Smith coming in. If you drafted Nolan Smith, you have T.J. Watt. You have Alex Highsmith. You have Bud Dupree. Nolan Smith is your fourth edge rusher with your first round pick. I just think that'd be really rich there. But again, heck of a player. He's going to make someone happy. If he falls to 32, then I'm like, all right, I guess if none of y'all wanted him, then you'll add him to the mix there. But first round, I think they need a guy who's going to be contributing very soon. Then the other guy, you said Anton Harrison. I think Anton is a fine offensive tackle, but I think that they need a mean offensive tackle. I think they need someone who can be more than fine. I think when I look at Anton Harrison's tape, I see a guy who can get the job done, but he doesn't put exclamation points on a lot of his blocks, at least the ones that I've seen when I've studied him. And to me, that's what you want is a guy, especially in the run game, who will just maul you over. That's why so many people are talking about Darnell Wright, because he could put that exclamation point on the run game. He can be physical and bowl people over and build that momentum when you're going to be a run blocker. And again, that's what the Steelers are looking for. So I think Anton Harrison is a solid offensive tackle. I just don't know if he's the ultimate pick there that you want to build your offensive line around, because I really think this is a year where they have an opportunity where if they made a move, let's say they trade up, they could get a guy who can become a pillar of the offensive line with the offensive tackle. So I'm not so sure there. And who was the third one you mentioned?
It's Antonio Johnson, the Texas A&M linebacker.
So interesting that they have him listed as a linebacker.
That's what they said. Yeah.
Interesting. He's more of a safety. I know he's 6'2" and he's long. But Antonio Johnson, I mean, I guess if you made him kind of like a Marcus Allen type, like you brought him down, but I've only ever seen him listed as a safety. I guess he's officially 6'3", but he's very long and he tackles well. So I guess if you brought him down to linebacker, that'd be very interesting. I'd be intrigued to see how he'd fit there. As far as overall strength, his length is really good, but I guess I'd be a little hesitant calling him putting that linebacker full time. But hey, I mean, again, you're looking at guys like some people have him as the second best safety prospect this year behind Brian Branch, and I think that he'd be a really good, he'd be your traditional box strong safety that you could throw in there and develop behind these guys. But again, with the signing of Keanu Neal, I don't know if they feel as pressed to get that guy, but again, I think Antonio Johnson, a good fit for that strong safety box position, dime backer type spot. Just depends on how much they value that position in this draft class.
How do you think things are going to go with Nolan Smith? Because I saw him go as high as number 8 overall in the mocks this week. I've seen him go as low as the second round, which means if the Steelers are at the top of the second round, that means he could be available to them there. What read do you have on his stock? Because I think it's kind of late in the process to kind of see this kind of spread.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that because of his size, right? Like you look at his build, and he doesn't look like the traditional edge in today's NFL. Like, traditional edges, like Will Anderson, 6'3", 253, Tyree Wilson, 6'6", 271, but Nolan Smith, 6'2", 238. But here's what I'll say to that is that, James Harrison, made his career in the NFL at like 5'10", 5'11", and was just really explosive. Miles Murphy's kind of the bigger, the guy that, he's injured, but 6'5", 258. He has that traditional thing there. But you look at Nolan Smith and what he does. He ran a sub 4.40. He has a 41.5-inch vertical, a 10-foot 8-inch broad jump. I mean, you can't pass that up in the first round if you're an NFL team. And again, it's just, I think the Steelers in their position, they already have some really good edges. I think they're going to sign another, a good depth edge. And then if you're bringing Nolan Smith in, unless they have a really good feeling that they're not going to be able to sign Alex Highsmith after this season, okay, then maybe bring him in, and then you have Nolan Smith and T.J. Watt working on opposite ends. I think that I think that he goes in the first round. Those numbers, you don't test that well and then fall to the second round unless people are just really stupid, which, hey, it happens. There's times I'm just like, wow, how did that guy get to the second round? Because people were too caught up looking at other things. But, teams always get jumpy about edge rushers. They want pass rushers, and I think that Nolan Smith, Lucas Van Ness is a guy that, some people will list as an edge. I think he's more of a defensive lineman. Line him up on the inside, then flex him to the outside on occasion. Nolan Smith is a pure outside linebacker, pass rusher type dude. Let him play there. And again, if the Steelers found a way to get him, I think he'd be an asset. I just don't know if he fits what their roster is constructed to need right now in the first round.
Chris, I want to pull at the Enton Harrison thread a little bit too, because he's a name I've seen in a lot of like multi-round mocks, kind of coming up as a second round guy, and we haven't really talked about him. What did you see from him during the process that maybe wasn't on tape? That's kind of framing your view of him as in that kind of, I think, second tier below, the Darnell Wrights, the Broderick Joneses, those types of guys.
You said Anton Harrison?
Yes.
I think here's the thing is that he can do his assignments very well. Like you can make him a guy that plays offensive tackle on either side. And he's a guy who can, when he gets his hands on a guys, he can lock them up and he can have that. He can make sure your quarterback is protected. But man, if he deals with a strong pass rusher, like a guy that comes off the edge, like a Myles Garrett, he could get driven back pretty quickly. He just doesn't have the functional strength yet to hold down guys down. Now here's the other thing. He's 6'4", 315. He's 21 years old. He's a guy like Chooks. Like Chooks was a baby when the Steelers drafted him. He was like 20 years old. And like he's like about to be like 25, 26 years old with 5 years of NFL experience. Anton Harrison could be a very good long-term pick because I just don't think he has the strength now. But a lot of offensive linemen, a lot of linemen, period. Look at Cam Hayward, and when his numbers spiked in the NFL, you get that old man strength when you're an offensive lineman. And so an old man doesn't necessarily mean old, but like when you get to your late 20s, that's when you start realizing your actual power and getting that NFL strength that's going to make you a better player. I just don't know if the Steelers have that time to wait on an offensive tackle right now. You want a Broderick Jones type of guy or a Darnell Wright type of guy, a Matthew Bergeron, the type of guy from Syracuse, if you want a non-first rounder right there. Those are guys who I think have better functional strength right now and could still develop into even better players down the line. That's why I just have Anton Harrison. I think he's, again, good prospect, good guy that could develop into a consistent offensive tackle for the next 10-plus years in the NFL. Just not sure that he has the profile of what you're looking for. The Steelers are getting road graders. Isaac Samala, the guy they got from the Eagles, he's a road grader. Nate Herbig, who they also got from the Eagles, he's a road grader. I think they want their offensive linemen to be big, physical, and bully people in the run. Anton Harrison, not that as much. If you want another guy that profiles like that and to be, again, those are all veterans that they got there. You want to draft a guy who's going to be your long-term solution and part of the long-term solution to offensive tackle. You want to get a guy who is another road grader who's physical and can be the kind of pillar you build off of. I think Anton Harrison is more of a puzzle piece than a builder, or a pillar, excuse me.
Chris, the top 30 visits are kind of starting to begin in earnest. Guys coming through the Steelers facility to get a bit of a closer look. Who's on that list of guys that have come through so far that's really stuck out to you as someone, maybe we haven't talked about today or recently that could be a real threat to be taken by the Steelers. If not in the first round, then with one of those 2 second-round picks.
3 recent ones that have been announced and reported and everything are cornerbacks. Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State, Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State, of course, and Julius Brents out of Kansas State. Now, here's the thing: everyone knows Joey Porter Jr. This is more of I think this is more of like he walks into the office. There's a proud moment for a lot of Steelers people there, especially Mike Tomlin, who watched that kid grow up in high school and everything in this area. Of course, with his dad being here and everything. But I think that you look at the other options here. Emmanuel Forbes, 6'1", but he weighs like less than 170. You're going to want him to bulk up because you need him to be more physical, but really good ball skills. He fits the mode of what the Steelers are looking for on guys in the secondary, guys who can attack the football while it's in the air. I think that he'd be a really interesting pick in the second round, even at 32. I think he'd be really good. I think Julius Brents, I've been leading the Julius Brents hype train to the Steelers for a while. I got to talk to him at the Combine, Adam, and man, that kid's smart. He thinks through a lot. He carries himself well. And if you just watch his footwork and how quickly he adjusts to routes that he's covering, he seems so prepared. He's waiting for guys to make their moves, and he's not overplaying things often. He's using his 6'2" length that he's able to reach out, get guys. He's able to make plays on the ball. And he's so rarely looked out of position, especially if you go back and look at his Senior Bowl, not just what he did in the game, but all throughout the practices. He was locking everyone down. I think that if the Steelers found a way to get him in the second round, that would be such a win for the outside cornerback position. You could put him there. I mean, I think he could work his way to being a starter mid-year by this year, over a Levi Wallace or an Ahkello Witherspoon, just because of the way that he mirrors wide receivers. I love his footwork. He's precise and he's athletic. He tested very well at the Combine, extremely explosive. I think that he's my sweet spot cornerback pick. Like if you don't trade up and get Christian Gonzalez or Devin Witherspoon, or if you're not happy with Joey Porter at 17, or you're not happy with a Deonte Banks, I think Julius Brents would be a heck of a pick in the second round. I think he'd be that's the perfect fit and allow you to draft, say, hey, you want an offensive tackle? Go get him in the first round. You want a defensive lineman or a linebacker? Go get him with that 32nd overall pick. And then if I think Brent sits there at 49 and if no one else jumps at him, that's your pick right there. You have your cornerback of the future, and I think that he'd be a great solution long term at the cornerback position.
Yeah, you heard it here first, Chris. Well, I guess you didn't hear it. You said it. But, folks, Chris has the wisdom here. So definitely put Brent on your radar, even if we're not seeing him show up in the mocks yet. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for him over this next month. It's kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty, Chris. We're getting close. It's starting to feel a little bit more real.
It absolutely is. We're less than a month here. The draft starts on April 27th. So, it's heating up. It's getting exciting. And you're going to see more mocks coming out now. You're going to see more things. And also, I mean, you're seeing teams, the Steelers are still filling out roster spots. So now I also think the Steelers front office has done a really good job. It is going to be really tough to predict exactly where the Steelers go. Now, everyone's going to be able to make their predictions, and someone's going to end up being right because there's only so many picks you can make with the needs this team has right now. But the thing is that they have legitimately 4 or 5 different avenues that they could go right now. You could go get a top-tier offensive tackle. You could go get a top-tier cornerback. You could get a tight end if you wanted to. You could get another receiver if you wanted to. You could get a defensive lineman. You can get a linebacker. You can get a safety. There's so many positions, and I think that's a really good position of strength for the Steelers to be at, because then they can say, you know what? Like if another team tries to hustle them for a pick, they can say, you know what? Nah, we're not feeling jumpy right now. This is our price. This is what we're gonna do here. But at the same time, they can also be aggressive. Like they can say, you know what? We feel so comfortable about getting multiple players at multiple spots in the second round with what we have, that we feel like we can trade up and go get a top 10 pick this year and go get one of those go get a Broderick Jones, go get a Peter Skoronski, go get a Devin Witherspoon or a Christian Gonzalez, and you get any one of those guys. Steelers fans are going to be doing backflips because they're going to be like, we finally got one of those guys that we can never get every year because the Steelers are always finishing with winning records and they can never just be in that position. And now they found a way to be in that position. So all in all, Adam, I think there's a lot to be excited about and a lot of fun things to keep watching. And who knows, if they sign Bud Dupree soon, it's another position where edge becomes less important, but something they could easily keep an eye on and make a move at, and make a modest move at a player that they feel that they don't have to pay too much for in the as far as draft capital. So lots of exciting stuff coming your way. We'll have everything keep covering at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
To this YouTube channel, obviously Chris is also the host of the North Shore Drive, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. He's talking a lot of Steelers on that show with Ray Fittipaldo, Brian Bacco coming through, occasionally some other guests as well. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you pop a like on this video. Help us out with the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. And please check out the subscription deal down in the description. $6 for just 6 months of access. That's just $1 a month for everything I'm writing, everything Chris is writing about Pitt, everything all of our Steelers writers are doing leading up to the draft. It's a great deal, so make sure you're signed up for all that with the Post-Gazette. With that, Chris, I'll bid you farewell for another week, and we'll look forward to talking more soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.
Woo!